there, Mark?
You're not at the head table there?
No, not at all. I just thought that was hilarious. I got it's like, so your dad leaves you in charge of an NFL football team. You haven't won it since you've been in charge. You haven't built a stadium. You haven't won a playoff game. What have you really done to get to the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, when's Minucci going to get that? You know,
I'm
kids
waiting.
playing D1, kids playing
hoping.
NFL. You know, I mean, Minucci should be getting on that list. I guess when it's a slow year, they'll call Minucci and see if we can sell some tables.
I will get to at least the Tempe All Cities Hall of Fame this year, but not the State Hall of Fame. Yeah,
really?
Yeah, coming up March 24th. Yeah, they must have ran out of people to put in the Hall of Fame from Tempe, I guess. So,
yeah.
So, Minucci's available. Let's put him in. You know.
All right, we got a repeat here of another Super Bowl there, Mark. And since you're one of the butt guts up front on the line, you know, both of these teams, they rely on their defensive lines to create havoc. How important is it going to come down to both these lines on both sides of the ball for this? Will it come down to the trenches, you think?
Yeah, absolutely. It always does in big games like this. And the team that doesn't turn the ball over first, because neither of these quarterbacks really turn the ball over in the playoffs. Patrick Mahomes hasn't thrown an interception, and Jalen Hurts has done a terrific job with the football. So when you look at these teams, it's going to come down to the trenches and the offensive and defensive lines, who can set the tempo early, who's going to get that big play early, and who can get their monkey off the back and get that first down, drive down the field. You saw last week against the Commanders what Philadelphia's defense did in that first drive. They were on the field for 18 plays. The first drive. Washington methodically drove down the field against Vic Fangio's number one defense. And what happens the first play when the Eagles get it? Saquon Barkley. Yes. Bam. Runs a touchdown. So establishing that tempo early, particularly up front, I think it's got to be the Eagles' offensive line because they're more solidified right now, and they're playing better than the Kansas City Chiefs' offensive line. And remember, a lot of these players, they're involved in Super Bowl 57 when they had a 10-point lead at halftime and let it get away from them in the second half.
You know, Mark, you look at the offensive coordinators versus the defensive coordinators. All these guys are doctorals in what they do. Kellen Moore versus Spagnuolo, Andy Reid versus Fangio. At what point, when you see these guys, and they're all playing really well, what's going to give? What has to give eventually with these masterminds running their defense and their offenses?
Well, two things. When you look at Andy Reid, you know that special play is coming sometime during the game. Whether it's going to be a play that's used early in the season or it hasn't been used since last year or 2 or 3 years ago, there's going to be a play that you haven't seen in a long time. The last play if you look at the Commanders, they had 3 wide receivers to the left. What they did is they flooded the zone, they moved everybody out, and they ran a snake out of the backfield to Samaje Perine. He hasn't even caught a pass play during the entire game.
Yes.
All of a sudden he comes off the bench and makes one of the biggest plays at the end.
Amazing.
So it all depends who's going to do that first in this game. Kellen Moore, he's going to be the head coach of New Orleans Saints most likely. What does he have up his sleeve? Is he just going to come out guns a-blazing and say, hey, it's my last time being an offensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles after one season. I'm out of here going to New Orleans. Do I pull everything out of the bag early, or do I wait at specific times during the game to pull out a special play that they haven't seen in a while?
You know, Mark, I thought with you guys, with Joe Gibbs as your head coach and, you know, with the Hogs and Riggo, John Riggins, and basically you looked at your entire team. What is it about Joe Gibbs that you appreciated that you see even now that a lot of teams, maybe not copy, but are very similarities of what he did with you guys?
A lot of the times you see the teams that are running the counters now. Back then it was the counter trade. We were in the counter trade to the left and right, and we made it famous during the 80s and the 90s. And now they're running it almost every other play. There's some type of counter action out of the backfield. Or it's going to be a pulling action where a guard will pull it and a tackle will pull right behind him. Or a tackle may pull and a tight end may pull. Or a center may pull and a tackle may pull. So they're running a lot of these things where they're doing their power plays and they're pulling their offensive linemen and tight ends, and they're doing a terrific job with them. And it all depends which team establishes that early. Philadelphia's really good at that. And if you look at the Kansas City Chiefs, they're good at that. You know, both these teams, you look at both of these teams on both sides of the ball, they're excellent. Kansas City's been there, we know, multiple times. They're trying to go for a three-peat, which has never been done before. Philadelphia, there's a lot of players on that roster that are ticked off because the way they lost the last time, including the quarterback, Jalen Hurts. So are they coming back for a revenge factor in this game? And they're going to be healthy coming in. Jalen Hurts' knee's got to be 100% coming into this game. So those are the keys that I'm going to look for in this game. But it's going to be interesting who makes that one mistake early and then who comes back swinging after that mistake and how they can capitalize that with momentum is going to be key in this game.
Mark, I don't know if you could do this, but I want to take us back 37 years ago today. The Redskins beat the Broncos. You're there. Super Bowl 22, 42-10.
One of the captains.
Yep. Doug Williams is the MVP. It was also he was the first black quarterback to start in the Super Bowl. How big was that story that week? I know there's no social media back then, but was that something that was talked about quite a bit that week?
Absolutely. We had media days. I think it was like the first 3 days of the week where everybody had their own tables, and you had reporters come to your tables and they do like a round table and ask you a bunch of questions. My table was next to Doug. And I was at that table when that female reporter asked him, "How long have you been a black quarterback?" And the room went deadly silent. Doug is how he handles things throughout his entire life, calm, cool, and collective. I've been a black quarterback all my life.
I forgot about that.
You know, having a chance to play with Doug a little bit with the Arizona Outlaws and back him up. What a great guy, as you mentioned. But what is it about that game? Because did he come in was it for Jay Schrader? Did Jay get hurt, or I forget? It was Rippon got hurt, but he came in. He handled everything like a pro. I mean, it was amazing how he handled that.
Yeah, what had happened is during our playoff stretch, Doug got hot and Ripper got injured, and then Rip could come back, but they just decided to leave Doug in there because the way he was playing at the time. So we went out through the playoff run. We got to the Super Bowl, and then during the Super Bowl, if you recall, in the first quarter, I think it was like 3 or 4 minutes into the first quarter, Doug is throwing a pass and he gets twisted and gets rolled upon by a defensive end and twists his knee. He had to leave the game. Everybody thought he was out for the game. They thought he blew his knee. So he's on the sidelines warming up. He's starting to jog. He's starting to warm up. Rip comes in for a couple of series. All of a sudden, Doug comes back. And in the second quarter, he breaks the Super Bowl record for scoring points. I think it was 28 points in the second quarter by running the ball and throwing the football and doing a terrific job and just spreading the wealth through the offense. We ran the counter. We had Timmy Smith in that game that didn't know, as a running back, he didn't know as a rookie that he was going to start the Super Bowl. Everybody thought that George Rogers was going to start, but the coaches knew. And the way that we practiced, we knew that Timmy Smith was either going to play a lot or start. Here you've got a rookie that comes in to start and rushes for over 200 yards.
Yeah. Oh, 2 more minutes.
Doug had that in his back pocket, and it was one of those games where Doug was just phenomenal. The offense played great. After the first series, defense shut Denver down. Denver couldn't do anything with the football in the air or on the ground. And it was one of those things where you're on the sidelines and you're just enjoying it and having fun. That was probably the most fun in the second half of the game, regardless of a playoff game, Super Bowl, high school, college, that I have ever had in my life, because we blew them out in the second quarter, and we were just having fun in the second half. Joking around, high-fiving. We'd run a counter for like 30 yards and basically only block half of their defense. It was just a fun time. And I talked to Joe Jacoby 2 weeks ago about this when I was in D.C., and we were just laughing about it, saying, yeah, that was a lot of fun. We did have a lot of fun in that game. We probably had more fun in that game than any other game we had playing for the Washington Redskins. Do
you get credit for Riggins coming back? For some reason, he made our show yesterday twice. We're not sure why, but somehow there were some mentions about Riggins. Do you get some credit for him kind of coming back to the Redskins and making a second career of it?
Absolutely. The Hogs did. Once we started with the Hogs, if you look at the original Hogs at that time, you know, we had a mixture of some older guys like George Stark, Ron Saul, that played in the league for a long time, and a bunch of young guys. Bostic was in his second year. Jacoby
minute left.
Was a rookie. I was a rookie. So there's a great mixture of youth and age and talent in that offensive line room. And for us to do what we did in the way that we did it, we really established the run, and we had the largest offensive line in the NFL by far. And we really kind of changed the way that the offensive lines were built in the NFL, because you had linemen back in my day that were at offensive guard at 225 and 230. Mm-hmm. You had tackles at like 245 and 250. When we came in, we were like, Jacoby was like 315. I was 285. Grim was 275. So we really changed the NFL because they never thought guys could move that fast. When we pulled on the counters and you're going up against a 215-pound defensive end or linebacker, it's a mismatch. When we're 280, 290 pounds, they didn't stand a chance. So when we ran our power games and our guts and our outsides and our counter games, nobody could barely stop us. We had so much.
You guys are good to rep.
Blocking, because I had games where Russ Grimm was telling Randy White, hey, Randy, guess what? The ball's coming right at you. And it did. We ran right at Randy White.
Hey, Mark, got about a minute here. What advice would you give the newbies to the Super Bowl? You played, 3 Super Bowls? Just the 2 weeks in between, and how do you handle that?
Get all your business taken care of this week. It should be done by now. It's Friday right now. All your business means your family, your friends, your high school coaches, all the people that want tickets and need hotels and all that stuff. Make sure that you either have a friend, you have a wife, you have an agent that takes care of all that stuff, and you get it done this week. Because once you get to New Orleans, it's all business. Yeah, you're going to have your media day and stuff like that, and your family will come down a couple days later. But once you get to New Orleans and you start practicing early in the week, it's nothing but business from that point on.
Good stuff as always, Mark. Have a good weekend. Next week we'll catch up with you, and we'll get a score from you next week. All right?
Oh, you want it after the game?
No, we'll get you before the game.
Before the game.
We got 5 days next week to do predictions. We got plenty of time.
I already have my prediction, but I'm not telling you now. I have my score, but I'm not going to tell you until next week.
Thank you.
Good stuff.
Appreciate
Good stuff. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate you. Have a good weekend. That's Mark May
Guys,
joining us. You can follow him on X, Twitter, Mark_May. Today's brought to you by the DraftKings Sportsbook and TPC Scottsdale, the area's best kept secret for sports entertainment. We will be broadcasting there Monday and Tuesday of the WM Open. Pretty excited. We'll have the voice of the Philadelphia Eagles, Merrill Reese, on the program on Monday. So looking forward to catching up with Merrill Reese. Again, the voice of the Philadelphia Eagles. We'll catch up with, I'm sure, Mitch Locust.
Mitch Holthus.
Will join us sometime later in the week as well, the Kansas City Chiefs voice. So that's all coming up next week. But again, we'll be at DraftKings at TBC Scottsdale Monday and Tuesday. We'll come back with our locks of the weekend, brought to you by Upper Crust Pizza and Wine Bar.